Okay, and we're live. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julian Morse. I'm the MLA for Frame Lake and Chair of the Standing Committee on Government Operations. This afternoon, committee is reviewing Bill 32, an act to amend the Public Service Act number 2. This meeting is being live streamed on the Assembly's social media channels. And as a reminder, as always, to keep the meeting running smoothly, please direct all comments and questions to the chair and wait to be recognized before speaking, just so our folks in the audio-visual booth can have time to turn on your mic. We'll go to member introductions first, and then to the minister, and we also have a special delegation who I'll introduce in a sec. Ms. Reid?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am MLA Kate Reid for Great Slave here in Yellowknife. Thanks for being with us today.
Okay, and starting with Mr. Hawkins online.
Thank you, everyone. Robert Hawkins, MLA for Yellowknife Center. I apologize I can't be here, but in person, that is, to the meeting. I am online, and along with our millions of subscribers, as always, I'm happy to be part of this process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Danny Rogers. I'm the MLA for Newey Boot Lake. Good afternoon to everyone. Look forward to the meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Whalen Armstrong?
My name is Jane Way Ellen Armstrong, MLA for Mofi, Cliche Region.
Thank you very much. So this afternoon, committee is pleased to welcome the Honourable Caroline Wozniak, Minister of Finance, and officials from the Finance Department to speak about Bill 32. I would also like to welcome a delegation from Tobago, including the presiding officer and deputy presiding officers of the House of Assembly Legislature, Assembly Legislature staff, and a number of students from secondary schools in Tobago. So thank you very much for joining us. We're excited to have you here and watching in on our meeting, which I'm sure is going to be very exciting. So, Minister, if you want to begin with your opening remarks and presentation, and then we'll open the floor to questions from MLAs, as always. So, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to committee for the opportunity to present Bill 32, an act to amend the Public Service Act. With me today, starting on my right, Deputy Minister of Finance Bill McKay. At the far end on my left, Tara Hunter, Deputy Secretary of Human Resources. Gabe Byatt, Senior Policy Advisor. Drew Robertson in the room, Ministerial Special Advisor, and Senior Advisor to the Deputy Minister, Nora Russell. As you know, Mr. Chair, and as committee knows, the Public Service Act sets out legislative authority for the management and direction of the territorial public service. As you are also aware, this legislation is now quite out of date and in need of amendments to bring it to modern standards. The datedness of the legislation causes issues, costs, resources, and does not provide good value for residents. Efforts to address issues presented in the legislation began nearly 10 years ago. Much of the substantive work was completed in 2018. This process has been delayed by a number of factors, largely outside of the GNWT's control. However, in recent years, substantial progress has been made, leading to today. As you are likely aware from your review, Bill 32 and discussion of the bill in the Legislative Assembly, the changes being introduced through these amendments are significant, impactful, and long overdue, as mentioned. The changes introduced through this legislative amendment represent one of the most comprehensive modernizations of our public service legislation in decades. They aim to strengthen fairness, transparency, and accountability while ensuring that the workforce remains responsive to the needs of the public. And as you will hear in the presentation, the amendments clarify roles and responsibilities, with amended legislation providing clearer definitions of employee categories, updating the Employee Code of Conduct, and setting out the purpose of the legislation, namely to maintain an independent, ethical, and well-qualified public service. The amended legislation will also enhance employee protections and opportunities, with stronger provisions for merit-based hiring, providing space for equity programming to support diversity, and expanded equal pay protections. There are clearer rules for casual employment and improved safeguards against discrimination and reprisals for safe disclosure of wrongdoing. Significantly, amendments to the legislation will increase transparency and public confidence in the GNWT by introducing a robust framework for whistleblower protection, fair processes for discipline and dismissal, and balancing of employees' rights to political participation with the need for impartial public service. These changes matter because they empower employees, protect integrity, build trust with the public. They also align with our practices with modern standards of equity, accountability, and good governance. That concludes opening remarks, Mr. Chair. I would turn over to the Deputy Minister to provide the presentation, please.
Yep, go ahead, Mr. McKay, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So presentation is up on your screen there. This is going to be, as the minister said, just an overview of the amendments we're proposing to the Public Service Act. So this will be a pretty comprehensive review and a number of amendments in all areas of the Public Service Act, which we feel will modernize it and bring it up to date, as the minister said, as it hasn't been amended substantially since 1988. So just to give committee an overview of kind of the major changes that this bill will bring to the Public Service Act. First of all, it's going to clarify what the purpose of the act is. So we have a new provision in there that outlines what the purpose of the Public Service Act, which hasn't been in there before and is typically part of a legislation, broad-based legislation like this in other areas. And then we have a number of key changes that we've introduced, so I can just go over some of those areas for committee, and then we can get into different, specifics with committee in answering your questions. So first, we're introducing a number of changes that will clarify the roles and responsibilities of the minister and the deputy minister, basically giving, and deputy ministers within the government, or heads of departments, heads of agency. It gives clarity to what their role is, what powers they have, what authorities they have. And a lot of these are just in practice already, but not in legislation. So we're formalizing them by putting them in legislation. It also has a number of clarifications and specific provisions regarding staffing procedures. So the Public Service Act typically was silent on a lot of these things. So now there are step-by-step provisions within the Public Service Act that will show how staffing is done, and all the way from recruitment all the way up to staffing appeals, which is outlined clearly in the legislation, which will be outlined clearly in the legislation if this bill is adopted. There's also some provisions about equal pay, and particularly with respect to the Equal Pay Commissioner and how they're appointed. And then there's also some provisions about labor relations, and specifically with respect to mediation and arbitration under a collective agreement and how that's addressed. And then, as the minister said, one of the key provisions in this bill is outlining the safe disclosure provisions, and specifically it will not only put it formally into legislation, so right now it's subject to an agreement between the government and the union, but now it'll be formally within legislation, which will allow all employees, not just union membership, to access safe disclosure, and it outlines the rights and responsibilities of employees and the government under the safe disclosure provisions are all outlined in this bill. And then finally, at the end of the presentation, Mr. Chair, I'll just give the committee an update on the other, our response to the committee's report on Bill 26, which was the private members bill regarding bargaining agents. And we can give committee an update on the next steps with respect to the government LP and bill that will be coming forward to committee and eventually the Legislative Assembly in the next little while. But I would just reiterate that the focus of this presentation will be on Bill 32. So here, just giving committee another overview of kind of the main points of the legislation. So the bill, as I mentioned before, outlines the roles and responsibilities, safe disclosure process, and all those things. Again, just in more specific, it outlines minister accountability. So it outlines specifically that the minister oversees the public service. So that's specifically in the legislation. It also makes it clear that the Deputy Minister of Finance manages the public service, particularly staffing and administration. It also outlines what deputy ministers or heads of departments have responsibility over, and how that can be delegated down. It also outlines specifically that our recruitment is based on merit. So that was always the case, but it's specifically in the Public Service Act that it's a merit-based process for recruitment into the public service. And then It also was subject maybe to more policies, but now it's specifically in the Public Service Act. It deals with non-competitive appointments and transfers, so, and how they could support adaptability and training. Finally, just going again into more specifics on some of the areas where the bill touches down on. So there's staffing appeals transparency. So Bill 32 integrates staffing appeals criteria directly into the Act, as I mentioned before. So that'll be in the Act and can't be changed unless the Legislative Assembly agrees to it. Same thing with the Code of Conduct. So the Code of Conduct always exists, but now it's put into the Act specifically that the Code of Conduct should be established and disciplinary measures put in place for non-compliance with the Code of Conduct. Also, there specifically within the Public Service Act now, it makes it clear for public servants what the limits are on public comment on government policies are, and then it also outlines what the political activity standards. So basically, when you can run for office or when you can contribute to a political party, or if you can, it specifies in particular that you can make contributions to a political party or political candidates. So there's a lot of specific provisions in there that will be added to the Public Service Act if this bill is adopted that will outline for employees and the public clearly what the political activity standards are. And again, Equal Pay Commissioner will now be appointed by the Commissioner of Executive Council. So, and they'll be charged with ensuring that there's pay equity within the public service. As I mentioned before, there are collective bargaining updates within the bill, and these again will give the public service as well as the public a clear understanding of the rights of the union and the rights of the government in terms of collective bargaining, and also outlines clearly when they can go to mediation and arbitration. It also, there are some provisions in there that allow for the Public Service Act to be aligned with the Arbitration Act with respect to labor relations arbitration. And then finally, there's updates to promote engagement, equitable treatment, and collaboration in the public service with the union, between the union and the government of Northwest Territories. And then finally, Mr. Chair, we have the safe disclosure process. So this outlines a comprehensive safe disclosure or whistleblowing regime that all staff now can use in order to, in confidence, disclose wrongdoing by people within the government, potential wrongdoing, and allows for investigation, independent oversight, and accountability in this process. And as I mentioned before, it extends it to all employees, including excluded employees. And then finally, Mr. Chair, as the committee is aware, Section 41 with respect to collective agreements, currently Section 41 and Bill 32 doesn't address this aspect of Section 41, but currently Section 41 makes the UNW the only bargaining agent with respect that can negotiate collective agreements with the GNWT. So that isn't being addressed in this bill. It's being addressed in a future bill that will be coming from the government and subject to a recent report, or that issue is subject to a report which the committee released with a number of recommendations, and we will be responding to those recommendations, including the recommendation that an LP be shared with committee in May of 2026. So we'll be on schedule to share that LP with committee, and then it will move forward with a draft bill, and we expect first and second reading of that bill to occur in October of 2026. So we'll have a bill tabled with the Legislative Assembly then. So, Mr. Chair, that's the end of my presentation, and I'll turn it back to you, and the Minister and us can answer any questions that the committee might have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Minister, I assume you don't have any further comments? I'll go to questions from committee. Ms. Reid, did I see your hand? Okay, Ms. Reid first then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation today. With regards to the public disclosure officer, it notes in the bill that deputies are required to prepare an annual report considering any investigations and make it publicly available in a manner that they consider appropriate. So does the minister or her staff believe that there might be a risk in allowing differing approaches to how reports are shared? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Over to the minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me direct that first to the Deputy Minister, please.
Thank you, Minister. I think Mr. Byatt could, yeah.
All right.
If it pleases the committee, Your Honor, I apologize. Mr. Chair, I'd like to review my notes and come back with the appropriate rationale for that decision, just to make sure that we are respecting what the drafters and the intent was at the outset of this.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Ms. Reed, do you want to ask a different question while they come up with that answer?
Sure, and if they want to provide it in writing, that's fine too, Mr. Chair. I have no problem with that. So I guess my next question would be then about the Equal Pay Commissioner. They have highlighted in their annual report that ensuring pay equity, that pay equity is established and maintained over time requires periodic systematic reviews. A legislative requirement for a legislative review would provide a robust and enduring mechanism for pay equity accountability. So I'm curious as to why there is not a legislative requirement for reporting considered in Bill 32. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to the minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, again, let me perhaps see if, I think for pay equity, let me take that to Tara, please, Ms. Hunter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. So to answer the question, in terms of the Equal Pay Commissioner, they'll now be appointed by the Executive Council, and this will allow for a more focused commitment. And your question was around
Annual reporting.
annual reporting.
No, it was more about, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Reed, if you want to clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. They have highlighted previously in their annual report, my question is not about the annual report, I apologize, that making sure that pay equity is established and maintained over time requires periodic systemic reviews. And so I'm curious why there is no legislative review contemplated in Bill 32. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry. Looks like it's Mr. Byatt. Is it Byatt or Bias? Sorry.
Byatt. and
Byatt. Okay.
unbiased.
Yep, got it.
As much as possible, we would like to be able to be responsive without requiring change to come from the highest levels, where we are able to advance and make progress for employees, and as trying to improve on the governance that our public service provides. At various points, we've been limited in how we can make legislative change, and endeavoring to produce the best for our people, our residents, requires us to be as responsive as possible. Best practices are changing, evolving, and we don't want to slow anything down by making the process to change too arduous. A big part of this is trying to make everything we do more transparent, more accessible, so people can understand the whys, the hows, and where the authority comes from. And as much as possible, trying to make this work that's done by government employees so that the people in power can have the chance to direct us, and we can get the work done and make it go forward.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess, Ms. Reed, you didn't have your second question answered, so maybe I'll go over to you next. And
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that allowance, and thank you for your answer. I guess just to push back against it gently, a legislative review, such as ones that happen in this committee, are I would say, quite robust and quite public and quite transparent. So I push back against that characterization and ask for the minister and her staff to maybe consider on that and provide an answer in writing. Thank you.
thank you. Over to the minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, understood. It's certainly been my observation that there are pieces of legislation, obviously, that have review provisions and which are not necessarily met on the timelines with which they are legislated. So certainly appreciate the comment. And my understanding is that this is an opportunity still to have it in the regulations, so not to be left out entirely, but just whether or not it goes into the legislation itself or into the regulations. Some expectation of a review, I don't disagree, is appropriate, but perhaps where it lands is maybe the issue, and whether it needs to be in the legislation, which is obviously much harder to change should the need arise. Like, for instance, if we are finding that whatever period of time is chosen is not being met, whereas if it's in the regulations, that can be changed more easily. But to have it somewhere, I take the member's point. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to open the floor up to other members of the committee. I haven't seen any hands go up online, but okay. Mr. Hawkins, I do have you next.
Thank you very much. Just a thumbs up. You can hear me okay? Thank you. Just a particular area of concern of mine is the better transparency around direct appointments, and how will the evolution of the new Bill 32, the amendments to the Public Service Act, help clarify or show some transparency on that? Again, if the minister at the get-go talks about fairness and transparency, I'm curious on how these will be fairly and in a transparent manner be communicated to the public. Thank you.
Okay, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, let me start that over with the Deputy Minister and see who we may have a few of us that want to chime in on it, please.
Oh, go ahead, Mr.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there are specific provisions in the bill that deal with direct appointments, and one of the things that is in the bill is that it will be direct appointments will fall under, instead of Executive Council, it'll be the Financial Management Board. So it'll be directly aligned with the Human Resource Division. So the Financial Management Board is responsible for human resources. So we will have more, I guess, oversight in conjunction with the Human Resources Division. But there are no specific provisions in there outlining the reasons for direct appointment, and I would say they're fairly rare, direct appointments, but there is that ability maintained in this bill to do direct appointments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Follow up.
I'll certainly say there are certain reasons why direct appointments can be very useful and helpful, and I would not suggest to abandon the tool, just to make sure it's very clear, of direct appointments. That said, it still deserves some sunshine, and because we don't know how many. I mean, I respectfully take the Deputy Minister's word about saying, well, there aren't very many, but the problem is I don't know that. I don't even know what that means. I don't know what not many means. I wouldn't know how to measure it to other elements of direct appointments. Nobody knows unless you're in the secret cabal of cabinet where you get that conversation tightly bound in your cabinet decisions. That said, it is a public service. The public service is broader than just the 7 members in cabinet who sit around the table there. And I'm just asking, as in, how will this proceed to a transparent process that the public service is being done in a transparent way? And I'm asking for what tools and mechanisms can be used here to ensure that there's a bit of sunshine on this particular process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Over to the Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, so every year we do publish a lovely document, both publicly and tabled as well as put online. It is the Public Service Annual Report. And in the Annual Public Service Report, which is again both online and in the House, we do report on all different types of appointments, including direct appointments. So more than happy to send the link to committees so that that information can be even more widely shared. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just opening up the floor to other members for round 1 questions before we go to round 2. Mr. Rogers or Ms. Whalen Armstrong? Okay, Mr. Rogers, you go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. Appreciate the presentation as always. Just around, we'll switch screens here. You have the IEP, the Indigenous Employment Policy, and I know members have spoke about, referenced in the Act. And then tying that into what Mr. Hawkins had said around direct appointments, and it's a question I had asked before. Can you kind of talk how you're going to ensure, if we're going to ensure that if indeed there are direct appointments, if they're still being given that same, I guess, IEP lens when you're doing direct appointments as you would when you're doing regular hires? Thank you.
Thank you. Over to the minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, so the Indigenous recruitment, the Indigenous employment policy applies to all competitive processes. So that will include the ones that come forward both through cabinet as well as through any type of advancement or placement. So no change there. That policy does still continue to apply to all forms of appointment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rogers, follow-up question?
No, that's good, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Whalen Armstrong, did you have questions for round one?
Yes, I do. Thank you for the presentation. With the openness, transparency, and I know that that's to gain trust because for so many years that, we do have trust issues, especially when it comes to the government and especially when it comes to jobs and etc. We never had that for many years. And even in people in my writings and people in the NWT, a lot of them I talked to in the past have said that, they have trust issues. A lot of them, because of the wrongdoing, nobody really advocated for them. This is what they're saying. So lately, what I've been hearing from the constituents and from other people is that because they feel, even now, they feel they are not represented well by other organizations or the one that was just presented. So a lot of them, what they're doing is that they are going to human rights office to advocate for them. So I just want to know and ask the minister, I would like to know how many of those decisions resulted in overturning that decision made by the public service office or because they're talking about openness and transparency. So how many of those decisions were overturned? The appeal process, the staffing, a lot of wrongdoings. So if the minister have any numbers, because I know that human rights have said that for Klitschko region, there were about 30, and then I think 11 or 12 were successfully completed, went in the favor of the people that put in complaints. So I just wanted to ask the minister that if there's a number, even though all these is all there, like the through the UNW, and they're there, but they feel they're not represented. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, so there's a few different pathways by which someone could go if they are not satisfied with a decision that's taken in human rights. And part of what is in this bill is, in fact, to clarify that process about what staffing appeals look like and the pathway by which people can make use of them. We can certainly provide some information on that regard. There is, again, in the Public Service Annual Report, we do report on staffing appeals. At this point, Mr. Chair, the Deputy Minister just pulled it up here. As of March 31st, or for March 31st, we had found that of the appeals, there were 52 in total, 52 were denied, and 2 had no appeal rights, which suggests to me that perhaps what the member is speaking to may be a different process, that an individual certainly can take any decision to the Human Rights Commission, who then do their own internal decision, whether or not it's within their purview and jurisdiction, and then if so, whether or not the matter will proceed. And then if it does proceed, quite often it goes through a mediation, which may or may not be reported upon, certainly wouldn't necessarily be reported publicly. So I don't have those numbers, and if that aligns with the 11 to 12 that may be here, I'd have to go back and double check with our folks. I mean, I can certainly, I suggest maybe just turning this over briefly to Ms. Hunter, maybe to speak a bit more, as she would be involved in all of those processes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Sure. Ms. Hunter, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last year, we had 6 Last fiscal year, we had 6 staffing appeals upheld and 54 were denied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Whalen Armstrong, do you have a follow-up question?
Okay, on what grounds those appeal were denied, the 54? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I might just, Ms. Whalen Armstrong, if you want an answer to all 54, do you maybe want to ask for that in writing?
Yes, I
Or-
would like to see that in writing.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know if the minister has kind of a high-level answer she wants to give to that, but Ms. Hunter, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At times, we see an appeal upheld due to a failure in the hiring process. Say a screening criteria wasn't applied appropriately, whether it be around education or experience, if an individual wasn't screened as they should have been screened in due to their affirmative action or their education experience, if it was a marking on a assignment, reasons like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for round 1 questions from committee members. I'm going to jump in with a couple of my own. The first one is just, I noted that the government names a policy in this proposed bill, the Indigenous Employment Policy. I guess I'm curious, just noting that policies, procedures, and things can change, why the government's choosing to name a specific policy in the act, which could, if the policy were to change, of course, render the act outdated. So can the department give some rationale for why the policy is specifically named? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good question. I'll turn that one over to Mr. Byatt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The naming of the, like so many different things we're trying to do here, we're trying to make it more clear what we're doing, what our priorities are, and where that authority derives from. We understand that that makes it, it might bring on work down the road, but we need people to understand what we're doing, and I think they understand why we're doing what we're doing, but they need to see the process. In order for it to be accessible, it needs to be transparent. The reference to the Indigenous Employment Policy, it feels very necessary because one of our questions this afternoon was about whether this would be applied still. We have to keep this a priority of ours, even if it invites having to make legislative change down the road. As we can see, legislation doesn't necessarily, outdated legislation doesn't necessarily get changed quickly, but that doesn't mean we don't continue to act in the best practices in government. A lot of what we see changed in this bill is a reflection of actions we've already taken, best practices we've already adopted. So we understand there may be changes to the legislation down the road, but the focus has to be on Indigenous advancement and employment.
Fair enough. And I understand the desire to highlight that. I'm just wondering if it does, if there's a way to do it that would achieve the same outcome but not put us in the position of having to reference like, it just puts the legislature in a difficult position where we may have to change an act anytime a policy is changed. So couldn't it just be more efficient to reference something that allows us to change policy and still achieve the same outcome?
Start. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, yeah, I suppose we're getting in, I'd be interested to have a legal drafter sitting here with us right now, like one of the technical folks. But in theory, if it's the policy itself continues to change, then we continue to reference the correct policy. If it is simply the name of the policy that changes, so for example, I mean, you know, the word from Aboriginal to Indigenous may be something that has evolved. It could be something akin to that. If it's purely name changed, my thought would be that we'd be able to use one of the omnibus bills that they bring annually where they're changing, when there are little updates that need to happen without having quite the upheaval of a full-scale amendment bill to be brought. If there's something much bigger, obviously, so if the Indigenous policy itself were to fundamentally alter such that it no longer can work in the way that it is referenced, well, then that leaves me to suspect that there's a much bigger thing afoot, right? So, I mean, I guess I'm, in this case, because of the centrality of this particular policy to the hiring process, I think that's where keeping it in makes sure that it's clear that what we are referencing. But yeah, we can certainly add that to a written response just to see if there is a technical response. As I say, that my hunch being that it could be, from pure name change, that it could be done easily. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just before I conclude round one, I just wanted to follow up on Ms. Reed's first question. Does the government want to reply to that now or provide a written response? Yeah, Mr. Byatt.
Listen, I'm sorry. Looking back in our conversation, I expected we would return that with a written response. I apologize. Moved on to Ms. Reed's second question, which was in detail.
No need to apologize at all. Thank you for that. Moving on to round two, we just wanted to get the commitment on the record to respond in writing. Round two, Ms. Reed, I have you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe we do need a drafter in the room because I'm going to get nitty gritty. I apologize. In your LP for this bill, it noted that definitions would be provided for all employment types, either in the Act or the regulations. From what staff have briefed us, only excluded employee is defined in the Act. The definition of incompetence has been removed. So I assume then that the definitions would be found in the regulations. What decision-making process went behind pushing the definitions to the regs? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Over to the minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if it would be Ms. Hunter or Mr. Byatt, but let me start. Let's start with Ms. Hunter, and then we might. No, no, I'm wrong. Mr. Byatt.
As much as possible, where things are expected to need to be responsive, or we can make changes more quickly, they've been down-vested to regulations. This is in a lot of our modernization efforts have been looking at what other places in the country are doing and trying to bring ourselves up to speed with what other places are doing. And we haven't invented the wheel or reinvented the wheel or done anything like that. We've put new treads on our own wheel, and we are trying to make sure this will work better for us by adopting as much as possible what works well in other places. So in other places, we've seen that having the ability to make more quick change in some things, preserving those in regulations is important for that responsiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Follow up.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that, to Ms. Minister's staff. I guess my concern then with this approach then is there are quite a lot of things that are being shifted into regulations, and I appreciate the government's response around why. However, will the coming into force date of the Act need to be delayed, considering that the regulations will also need to be updated? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, over to the minister.
To Mr. Byatt, please.
Mr. Chair, my involvement in this process was before the LP was submitted, and it's been in the past month. But my understanding is that regulations have largely been drafted and will be, that process shouldn't be lengthy. This is the part of the process we're trying to get through to get to the speedily completing it. I think regulations will be done quickly.
Okay, thank you. I have Mr. Hawkins next in round two.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I draw attention to the direct appointment issue again. As reported by the NWT Ombuds Office, I think back in 2024, they had sent in made some observations regarding the hiring fairness outside of competitions, and I'll briefly quote. It says, staffing decisions outside of competitive process can also raise concerns, questions about the fairness of the use brackets, or in some cases the non-use close brackets of direct appointments. And it goes on about the culture of examples, refers to who knows who and other things. So it also points out that there's concerns around P1 appropriate hiring, which is given chances or maybe not, who knows. And so this is a report provided by the Ombudsman. So ultimately, my comment, not necessarily question, is just to reference that the transparency process is still lacking. I welcome whatever link the minister sends, but that's kind of the issue, which is even just saying they've done 3 direct appointments by way of example is probably not enough in communicating it. And on top of that, tabling a report
Okay, thank you. Minister, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Mr. Chair, firstly, I certainly didn't mean to scoff at anyone's questions. But simply to reaffirm that as we do now, that we will continue to use the annually tabled and published Public Service Act or Public Service Report to report on the details. So that hasn't changed and it's already happening. And didn't want anyone to suggest or to think that we weren't. Appreciate that there are always ways to improve any human system, including that of the government and that of the public service. So with that, Mr. Chair, I thought perhaps with direct appointments, if I could, Ms. Hunter might speak to it, and then as it applies in the current act, with a view to making sure we are fully answering the question at hand, I'll then perhaps turn it to Mr. Byatt, who would be more familiar with what we're changing in this act. Please.
Ms. Hunter, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of the direct appointment guidelines, they're actually not an internal document. They are FMB approved. And there is a series of criteria that one must meet in order to be direct appointed to support the development of a long-term employee, retain a specialized unique experience, career development of an Indigenous employee, and things of that nature. In terms of our direct appointment statistics, they tend to be primarily Indigenous employees, and often you'll find that it is graduate nurses, interns, teachers, and positions of that nature. Thank you.
Mr. Byatt?
And I would add that the intent here is to make, as in many situations, the intent is to make some of our processes and our programs work better, to not delay things. We have heard from, and we've seen in situations where people are participating in our, especially in Indigenous employment programs designed to aid in the advancement of Indigenous employees through our workforce, that's people are being held up unnecessarily and not getting the chance to get into the positions we're appointing them to, that sometimes it's better to report after because we need to get the job going, we need to get people in these positions. Provisions in the changes that are being made in this case are meant to give some structure and ensure that the, as Mr. Hawkins pointed out, that these direct appointments are used, that we are using them to advance the programming we are intending to advance. For example, provisions are also being added, they're just reading, provisions are also being added where the deputy head of a department may make appointments without competition to fulfill a duty to accommodate in accordance with the staff retention policy, successful completion of an employment development program approved by the Financial Management Board. These are circumstances where we want to accelerate, we want to expedite for employees, for people who want opportunities with our government. We're not trying to slow things down or pull the wool over anyone's eyes. We're trying to make this move faster, and the reporting will come. It is there. We need to be able to move things along as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hawkins, follow-up. Mr. Hawkins, do you have a follow-up question? You lost him.
Nothing further at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further questions for round two from members online? Okay. Not seeing anything. Ms. Reed, do you have further questions?
Forever, Mr. Chair.
By all means.
Yeah, I am just looking quickly, and I apologize, I didn't formulate this question very carefully in advance of this meeting, but I'm just looking over the sections of the bill that deal with the bargaining timeline, a notice to initiate the defined stages of negotiation, mediation, and conciliation. I believe the reason I'm having a difficulty following it is because this isn't a repeal and replace in totality. It's not the entire act. It's not everything in context. So can the minister or her staff explain a little bit more about how these changes will change the notice to initiate, and indeed what triggers will be necessary for the bargaining timeline to kick off? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Minister.
Mr. Byatt, please.
I think that this is a place where it's appropriate for us to return a written response, so we can, if that makes sense to the minister.
Sure.
The member. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll record that. Ms. Reid.
Just to include also then those other defined stages of negotiation, mediation, and conciliation would be helpful too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Reid. Ms. Whalen Armstrong, you have a question?
Yes. Since we're still on the Public Service Act, since introducing the Indigenous Employment Policy or Indigenous Employment Hiring Policy, I just wanted to ask the minister if they've seen any increase hiring Indigenous people, especially from those in the NWT and by regions. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, the Indigenous Employment Policy, of course, as members know, was introduced and came into effect April 1st only. So we would not necessarily have, I mean, even since that point, it would be competitions that have only run since April 1st, to which that would have fully applied. So, we certainly have had competitions through completion in that period, but wouldn't have done, I don't have with me today in this context of the review of Bill 32, even preliminary numbers of what those competitions are. So, I can certainly commit to providing an update of what we have to date, but would just caution that there haven't been, it hasn't been a full year, for example, and I don't know to what extent each department may necessarily be represented, as I can say. So that said, we'll do our best to get some numbers for committee, noting that we would typically report over the course of a year and not just a few months. But we'll see what we can come up with, Mr. Chair. And just want to confirm, we'll include with that geographic scope employments or hirings, which have also been used. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Whalen Armstrong, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, with the mine closing, I know it's a serious concern for many of the Indigenous government, the communities. So, and I know that majority of the employment opportunities in small communities are mostly GNWT, community governments, and or band office or hamlet office. Those are the majority, the workers or the employment, they're the employer in small communities. And I know there's going to be, I know we have to, GNWT, there's going to, I know that we're going to be taking care of the mine workers or, so that an influx of people leaving the NWT. And then I know that a lot of people are planning to return home to their communities due to high cost of living, especially living in a larger regional center. So with that in mind, I just wanted to ask, is there any plan in place to meet the needs of the people living in small communities? And I know that education plays a factor. Decentralizing jobs to small communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, so the Public Service Act modernization itself as a piece of legislation doesn't necessarily speak to broader government initiatives directed at supporting small communities. But for what I can offer today, again, just outside of the present act, We certainly are, there's a couple of things that the Department of Human Resources or Department of Finance and Human Resources can and is working towards. One continues to be the remote work policy, which we certainly have done a refresh quite recently with senior officials to remind them of the existence of the policy, but also the spirit and intent, which was that people can apply to and be expected to have a success on positions that might be normally provided for and normally take place within a headquarters environment, any regional office that is, not necessarily just Yellowknife, and then they could continue to work in smaller communities and not have to necessarily displace themselves to a larger center. So that certainly is one that continues to be a factor. Also, Mr. Chair, one of the other areas that the Indigenous Recruitment and Retention Framework speaks to is, again, having regional competitions. So keeping a position within a range of positions, and I'll rather than using the members' riding, I'll look elsewhere just for, by way of example, the Nahende riding, you might say, we want to hire someone and to market so that the geographic location of hiring captures all of the communities within Nahende, to really focus on that in that specific area. So those are a couple of the things that the department certainly can do. And then more broadly, Mr. Chair, I would also say I can certainly, don't speak for all members of the Financial Management Board, but broadly as a theme, when positions are being requested from departments, from the Financial Management Board, one of the analysis that does take place is, in fact, whether or not the department has considered the placement of the position, and does it have to be in Yellowknife? Does it have to be in a headquarters? Or can this be an opportunity to move a position, or to at least to encourage that a position has a different geographic location? So, and I guess, the question was around meeting the needs. So one last thing, Mr. Chair, we do still also, of course, have the regional recruitment and retention and the building community with building capacity in Indigenous governments, which is the transfer program. And we've had GNWT employees who were employed in regional centres go back to work in smaller communities with Indigenous governments with some financial support to make up the cost difference in salary. So definitely a few of those programs. That one tends to be quite popular and well subscribed, but certainly happy to have that. If that's the challenge, is too much interest, then that's a challenge we're happy to have. So there's a few things on that front, Mr. Chair, and hopefully that helps give a sense of at least some of these initiatives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further questions for round two, unless Mr. Rogers, you have one? Doesn't look like it. We can go to round three if members have further questions. Do any members have further questions for the minister? Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, we can follow up in writing as well. Okay, I'm not seeing any further questions, which brings us to the end of the briefing. Minister, do you or your staff have any closing remarks or final thoughts to share with committee while we're here?
Mr. Chair, let me just say briefly, I know that when we were preparing to come today, that our own internal briefing, myself and the officials that are with us, in speaking to them, I can say, and I do want to make a point of saying that there's a lot of enthusiasm for these changes coming from the Department of Finance and from Human Resources. It's folks who are in the weeds of the operations of the public service day-to-day, recruitment, retention, support, and the point was made to me that there's a lot of changes here that, while perhaps maybe technical to those of us, including myself, who aren't engaged necessarily in the direct operations, they are changes that are, as we said, 10 years in coming, and really hopefully will help support employees. So they're not just technical for the sake of it. They are meant to make processes clearer and better for employees, that the staffing is better, that the clarity of purpose, even something as that didn't come up today really, but the safe disclosure of wrongdoing right now rests in an MOU rather than being legislative. And as such, it only applies to employees who are members of the union. But anyone who's an excluded employee has no access to that. So this will change that process. That's an important method and mechanism by which people can raise concerns in a safe manner. Hopefully will continue to feel themselves supported through that. So there are a number of things in here, Mr. Chair, that I do want to highlight. I know we often do get into the specifics of individual concerns, but Given that it's a public briefing, I guess I wanted to just make those comments that we do hope that this is an opportunity to better support the employees who work within the GNWT, excluded and not. As I said, hopefully bring us much more up to date in the Public Service Act, which represents how we govern ourselves as a government, a set of employees. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So thank you very much for appearing before us today, Minister and her staff. This concludes the public portion of the meeting. Colleagues, as always, I'm just going to ask that you stay as we go in camera to debrief and discuss other business. Thank you very much.